Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we have an absolutely superb guest mentor, really good pro drummer and just such a lovely bloke. So let's get straight into his drummer stats. So, your name please, sir.
My name is Robert Bryan.
Thank you, Robert. And the years playing.
I would say that's 42 years.
Fairly pro then.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, and the groups and artists that you play for, past and present, or at least the ones you can remember.
Okay, well, started with Hugh Cornwell from the Stranglers, Peter Gabriel, Goldfrapp, Laura Pausini, Siouxsie Sioux, Simple Minds, Miles Kane, XTC, Colin, Moulding and Andy Partridge separately, but people know them better as XTC. Oh God, who else? There's a lot. Lorena McKennitt as well. Oh, that's enough, isn't it? Quite a few artists.
A fair few. Well, what we'll do anyway is on your details in this video, we'll put in the full list from you anyway, so everybody can see exactly what you've done and be able to find your information anyway, mate. So that's cool. And so, are you self-taught or schooled drumming wise?
I am schooled. My father was a jazz drummer, and he taught me to read. He taught me all the rudiments. He taught me all the styles, and he used to buy me loads of books and made me listen to loads of records and watch loads of late night jazz TV shows and stuff. So definitely schooled, but not through a university or anything like that, because I'm 52 and there really wasn't anything for sort of pop or rock drummers of my, if I'd have been 10 or 12, there was nothing around for me. So it was definitely all my dad's training, and then just using my ears after that and being able to read and take things further myself, really.
Yeah, it's kind of the same scenario with my dad being a professional drummer, Sticky Wicket, and kind of being almost a homeschooled vibe. Learning that type of trick, and then I don't know if it's the same for you, but I found that being on the ground and being at the gigs and watching those other players really absorbed a lot more, and kind of grew into my own playing.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And the experience they pass on, and the friends, like you say, you go to gigs and watch them play, and sometimes they used to let me sit in, which was a disaster because I'd speed up and get excited, and but you're cutting your teeth, aren't you? And you're learning the process, and you're doing it with people that really, they're like, for me it was like, come on young'un, because they're West Country, come on young'un, come and play the drums, and I'll play, and afterwards they'll say that was good, but you sped up a bit, you're getting a bit excited there, maybe less left hand work, more ride cymbal, concentrate, and it was just like a schooling, and you can't buy that, actually.
No.
That's the other musicians, not just drummers, talking to you, so their feedback is so important, as as well as just what drummers teach you. It's good to know what a sax player needs, what a piano player needs, what a bass player needs, what a singer requires of you in different styles. It's great.
Yeah,
Great
totally. That actually sets us up quite nicely for your final drummer stats question. Actually, is so what are or who were your favourite drummers? They don't have to be necessarily famous, just maybe favourite and influential drummers.
Obviously my dad to start with. Then there was Cedric Sharpley, who used to play with Gary Newman, who was very popular when I was 9 and 10. So that was 79, 80. He was a big pop star for about 3 or 4 years. So he was a big influence. Then I found Buddy Rich through my dad, and Shelly Man as well through my dad, and Joe Morello. But through my own investigation, I found Stuart Copeland, Clem Burke, Ringo Starr. John Lennon got shot in 1980, and they showed nothing but Beatles things for a while. And I was watching the Monkees, had no idea who the Beatles were, not really. And it wasn't until the poor fellow was shot dead, it was on the news. We went into school the next day and they were playing all these records and teachers were crying. Anyway, went home and saw the film Help. And I said, hey, these guys like the Monkees. And they said, no, it's the other way around. The Monkees were a copy. Anyway, so Ringo came on the scene, Billy Cobham, coming much later, Vinnie Colaiuta, Mark Giuliano, I love. Oh god, there's so many. It's hard to Jack DeJohnette. Not always jazz drummers. There's Tony Allen. There's so many people out there. If you went through some of these records and some of the MP3s on my laptop, like yourself probably, it's so eclectic. I usually find drummers are more eclectic than some of the other musicians. I mean, that's quite a statement, but I think it's fairly true because we're needed in all of those styles. Where sometimes a certain musician might not be required in the style, so they don't listen to it because they're focused. Whereas drummers, we're all encompassing. So Manu Katché I love too. He just popped into my head. It's not always technicians. Sometimes you just groove players. Phil Collins, I mean, I expect if we had more time we could just between us list loads of drummers that maybe if it's just one record that really influenced us. I mean, that's why I do those random record reviews sometimes on my YouTube site, because people think, why have you got that record? It's like, well, check this drummer's only good on this record, but check this out. What a great sound, or what a great vibe. So much to learn, man. So much to learn from so many people.
It's funny how you say about it's not always about the technical aspects of stuff. One thing that I always, well, if it gets brought up, I kind of harp onto it, is the Modern Drummer Festival in 2015, I think it was.
Right.
Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers came on before Ian Pace.
Right.
And he sat and he just played 3.5 minutes of a solid groove. No cymbals hits, no toms, just solid kick snare hats. And you could kind of see the room kind of went silent for a while in anticipation, and then it almost sounded like it got a bit awkward, and then a couple of hesitated laughter, and then you kind of got to the end of it and he just walked straight at me, picked the mic up, and he just said, do you realise what I've just done there? I've just secured a gig. and that to me resonated, and that always stuck, because I don't know about yourself, but I'm always quite open and honest with this. I get a lot of imposter syndrome, and I can get on a gig and feel like I shouldn't be there. But I think at the end of the day, if you're playing your best for that gig, that job, then you're on the money with it.
Absolutely, that's 110%. Yeah, you are absolutely right, and we all do get it. I mean, I don't know if I can mention this now if it's a good time, but obviously playing with Siouxsie at the moment, I'm in some big shoes. Budgie, the original Banshees drummer, was obviously her husband. They got divorced, but filling a role like a role pun, but filling a gig like that, is quite tough, because he's got all that history comes with it, and all those iconic drum parts on things like Land's End and Happy House and Spellbound and all these things, and I have to reproduce them. And you either go in and think, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm sort of, it's almost like Raiders of the Lost Ark at the very beginning, when he gets that bag of sand and he gets the head, that skull thing that he gets, and he drops it and it all goes wrong. You think, is it going to happen? Am I going to do this? And is everything going to go and collapse on me? And actually it doesn't. Because I'm not trying to play Happy House in 7/8. I'm respectfully playing it the way he played it, when he recorded it, and that's my role. But yeah, you're right. It's easy to get that, and I look at some fans sometimes, and sometimes people write to me and say, oh, I'm coming to see you in the Paradiso, or we're coming to LA to see you. You think, great, but then you think, oh my God, the burden of all those faces looking at you saying, come on then, impress me. And you get over it, because we do deserve to be there, and we have done the job, and we have to sort of pat ourselves on the back and say, look, everything's cool. I've got this, and have faith. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw something that you, funny enough, you mentioning about essentially, we go into these certain roles. Like I myself, I spent. Years ago, I did a lot more of the recording and artistic stuff, but my mainstay these days is now essentially playing other people's music, or other drummers that have written them, and then I get, live player mainly. And I saw something, it was funny, it was actually to do with drumless tracks to rehearse with.
Oh, yeah.
And someone put up a comment saying, you'd only want a drumless track because you can't play it like the record. And it stacked up an interesting kind of few comments and bits and pieces. And for someone like myself, who like I do a lot of theatre tributes, and it always feels like, if the diehard fans are the diehard fans, they love it. But I think that's the importance of what what we do is that, and to appease other people and realize that you are emulating something and you're encapsulating that original sound, but at the same time you're still you, and you still have to play like you. And what I've found, and I don't know whether you agree or disagree with it, is that at the end of the day, it's you that gets the gig. It's you that gets the job. They haven't accepted that other person that's come in and may have played it note for note and can excel at you over all those that... I used to do a lot of metal drumming, which had a lot of complex fills and bits and pieces. And as I'm a right-handed drummer, but I do all my fills left-handed. And I don't know where that's come from. Well, I'm ambidextrous generally, but all my fills are left-handed. So I've had to really work and put in six strokes or roughs and bits and pieces to figure out ways of getting around kit and things like that.
Sure.
But if it works, it works. And I suppose that's what my point being is that no one should ever have the fear of believing like they don't deserve to be where they are.
You're absolutely right.
Because you've worked for it, and that's the point. And someone may come in and be this flawless musician in comparison to yourself, but that's not the end all and be all of it, really, is it?
It really isn't. And as you know, there's other things that come into it. Students obviously ask you all the time. They ask me, my private students, and they say, how when you're going for an audition, do I have to be everyone's best friend, and do I have to do this, and what if I hear the other guy or girl that goes in first and plays, and I hear a bit of it, and I'm blimmin' hell. And I say, look, none of that is important. It's you going in with your personality, your character. You be yourself. Try not to be like the person who's just gone in. If you do unfortunately hear, they tried to make you not hear, obviously, but if you do overhear some stuff of them warming up and they're chopping it up, the chances are, if they're going for a singer-songwriter gig, that singer-songwriter and their people can be sat there going, if that's the way they're warming up, they're giving us chops. Do they know what they've come for today? No one gets really impressed by that. It's that great story, isn't it, of the one-handed roll that what's his name used to do in the drum shop just to get people's attention. Jojo Mayer.
Jojo Mayer, yeah.
He said, but you know what? He said, this doesn't get me any gigs, but this does. And you've just got to be yourself, be very, very confident in what you're doing, and just go in and don't try to be everyone's friend. Just relax and be yourself. And that's what they're looking for. So who cares if somebody played a stunning solo and then did the audition? They might not get the gig, because they're not looking for that. If it's a jazz fusion gig, maybe, but more often than not, it's not going to be that. So just go in with what you've prepared and play it to the best of your ability. Use your ears and trust yourself, and it really pays off. Because so many times, it's the classic, isn't it? It's like when you say for a drummer to sound check and they play a drum solo, and it's just like, that's not what the sound man wants. He wants single hits on the drums, and play something that you're going to play tonight, please. Don't do something that's, from your favorite Rush album that you're not playing that evening. It's all these little giveaways, and they're daft little things, but they are so important when being professional and dealing with other musicians and building up your confidence of what you're doing. You don't need to try and impress the support band by playing a fat solo. You will impress them by your natural playing and your ability to do what you do. That big thing to learn there, really.
Yeah, I think that is one of the hardest to learn, and also on that confidence factor as well. I went and did a drum clinic for a place in Gloucester not so long ago, and we were doing a Q&A, and one little lad said, I suffer from crippling stage fright.
Right.
How do you get rid of it? And I simply said, you don't, and kind of looked at me, and I went, you own it. I said, you can get better and you can improve, and your confidence will build up, and as you've got your chops for the gig that you need, then great. But if you do find yourself in that situation where it overwhelms you, then just own it and give yourself the confidence, and don't worry about. Obviously, you've got to work with the people around you, and it's all got to be comfortable and stuff. But you don't know, someone else on that stage might be having a bad day.
Yeah.
And just because they turn around and they snap at you at the time doesn't necessarily mean that you've done something, wrong.
Exactly.
And it's in a blink of an eye, isn't it? When we're on those stages, we can come off and mope about something for a week, but no one else has even noticed it after the fact, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's completely right. I mean, I had a little just a couple of weeks ago when we went back out, and you know, after COVID, we're going through a divorce, and I went straight back into the studio life. Lorena McKinnett didn't want to tour. Siouxsie wasn't touring at the time. Lorena McKinnett was my main touring work. I've been touring with her for 4 years, made 2 albums with her. But she was a bit cagey about going back. And my friends like Ian Matthews with Kasabian, they were off out, and I was watching all these people, and I was like, oh, when am I going to get back to my life? That's me. So anyway, spent 3 years in the studio working on lots of projects and doing clinics and teaching. All that was brilliant, you know, and I guess it had to happen for a reason. But then when Sue said we're finally going back out and playing 3,000 seaters and then 21,000 the other night, I thought, great. But I got to that first gig in Belgium, and well, for those first 3 gigs, I had stage fright. I felt giddy up on the drum riser. I looked at because you know, 2 or 3 tiers of audience members, as well as the ones at the front, and I'd feel like I was going to fall off my drum stool. I got through the gig, but I didn't say anything until about the 3rd gig, because I knew this big one in LA was coming, the big festival, and it just freaked me out, and it just showed that even though I've been playing for donkey's years, you never lose it anyway, because like you said, you never lose it. You need that part of you, that fear, kind of fight or flight thing. You need that as a human being. But the confidence thing usually takes over and says, okay, thanks for being worried for me. Just wait there. When I need you, I'll give you a shout. But for now, I don't need you. So let me go and do my job, and you can protect me another time when I'm about to step on a ladder that isn't done up properly or something. You can protect me at that point. And I found that I came home and I had to really discover the Rob Bryan that was Siouxsie's drummer that last played with her in 2013. I had to re-find him. I thought I could just breeze in after all those rehearsals and do it, and he just wasn't there. And it wasn't until I got into some meditation again. A friend of mine said, look, you got to focus, get a mantra. So I got myself a mantra. And I, do you know what? I spent a whole week last just, you know, whether I was just chilling in the bath or I was sort of lying down on the sofa or in bed, and I'll say this mantra, and I'll picture myself playing the set. I'd picture walking on. I'd picture what it felt like to look up at these people, and you know, and all this with my eyes shut. And I'd play the set over and over. And by the time I got to Pasadena, I was absolutely ready to play. You know, I was the other sort of fight or flight type Rob was there, but he wasn't who was in control anymore. And I said to all the guys, and that point you mentioned a minute ago about how someone can snap, you know, there was a lot of nerves that night because obviously the gig got cancelled, but that's a whole nother thing. And we did it the next night, but we don't need to go into that. So we did it. So we were so happy to be there, but there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of nervous energy. And I just went around all of our crew. I sound like a hippie, I'm not. But I went around all of our crew and I said, if I look over to you, just smile. We all need that feeling that, you know, we're loved on this stage tonight. The fans are going to go nuts because they love Sue. They're going to love us as well. But could we just have that? And everyone was like, oh, yeah, okay. And I got everyone to group hug. And as I say, I sound like a real, like, oh man, hippie. But do you know what? It really works. And even if the guitarist is supposed to be all rock and roll, you know, when they turn around and look at the drum riser, they'll sort of make a stupid face or smile and then go back to the voguing and all that. And so did Sue. And all of us would just have this lovely sort of Zen feeling. And it was wonderful. So, you know, it broke the tension down of anyone looking over at me going, oh, I'm really nervous. You know, it's because I just smile at them and say, come on, it's all good. You know, like, this is great. And it just changed the whole vibe of the stage. And I think if you can communicate with your band members like that and your crew and anyone who's with you and say, look, even if you're having a bad day, try not to get wound up. Just look at me. I said to everyone, I've got your back. I've got your back tonight. Even if your guitar string breaks, I can't do anything about it, but I'll do something that, you know, you're all safe. I'm not the goalkeeper. I'm not the Peter Shilton of the band or something. Yeah. I mean, I only remember goalkeepers from 1980, so it's Peter Shilton reference or Gordon Banks. So yeah, that's just an interesting point, and that's just literally happened to me over this last month, and I've learned so much from it.
Yeah, especially when you are in a touring bubble. And everybody around you becomes family. So if you have frictions, it almost feels more personified because you're in that moment, isn't it? And that sounds like a brilliant thing to do. Actually, I think I will take that on board and use that to calm down some of the people, or like you say, just say, you know, even if you're having a bad time, just pull a face or Some of the groups at IMD, there are younger players on it. They are absolutely superb, but we all have a wobble, and even if there's massive clangers and they feel like it's so bad they've got to apologise afterwards, I just laugh or pull a face, and then at the end of the gig it's like, well, it is what it is. You know the part, so it'll be fine on the next one.
Exactly, you'll get it right tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, like one of the, it's quite a heavy saying, but like, no one died. It's just a little thing that happened. I know it's quite a heavy saying, but it's kind of true. I've heard that so many times when I was growing up. And once you're in that situation, and you do drop a clanger. I remember Herbie Hancock saying once, with Miles, he dropped this clanger, and Miles put it right by playing a note that was lying somewhere within the register he was. And I think it's on video. You see Miles play, and he sort of goes, takes it out of his mouth and goes, and then carries on playing, but puts it right. And he just said, he learned so much just kind of from that experience. Like when, I think Pete Townsend fell over at Live Aid, didn't he, or something? And then Roger Daltrey took one as well, and he just went down with him to make it look like it was a thing. Like you say, it's a touring bubble. It's brilliant. I mean, with anything like that, I mean, I always talk to the caterers, I talk to the lighting people, I talk to the bus drivers. I make sure everyone is in this kind of, or I try to make sure everyone's in this, not just in the bubble, because we obviously are, but emotionally in the same place, and talking to people, saying, how are you doing, and a bit quiet, all right, okay, no, just asking, cool, all right. And just making those relationships, I think, is really important, because it transfers to when you're driving back on the road again, and maybe you need them to stop because you've got a bad tummy or something. And all these relationships, they all come together, and dealing with the lights, saying, what do you do on the drums? Showing an interest in all. And I've learned this from watching other musicians, and I just think it's a great way to work, rather than, oh, you're just the driver, I'm the drummer, I won't talk to you. Yeah, because some people are. You hear stories of some people being a bit thinking they're a few levels up as human beings. And I'm not down with that. I don't give a monkeys about that. I want everyone to feel loved. And if someone's down, I'm going to give them a hug. If they're not happy that day, I don't care what they're doing. They could be sweeping the floor. But if someone needs some help, you're there. And I just think it gives this lovely universal feeling of giving, and you get it back. So
surely, I'd like to think that also just gets the best out of people. If you are isolated and insular, and then you just come across as arrogant and stroppy, then of course you're not going to get the best out of the people that you then rely on in that split second when you're working. I suppose from a drummer's point of view, the closest thing to think of would be your own. If you got a drum tech on a tour, and for whatever reason you don't get on with them, well, that's not going to help you out in your dire need anyway, is it? And just that's the thing. Sure, whether it's a one-off gig or 3 months on the road, we are a community, a musical community, aren't we? And at some point you're going to come across those people again and work with them again. And even when I've had big fallouts with people, or quite poignant disputes over stuff, I always make sure that it's settled, and the air is cleared, even if the other person doesn't feel like it. And I'll go, okay, well, I'm telling you that the piece is made and it's all great and we're all good.
It is important, and you can liken it to some kind of like I said, a hippie kind of way of being, and an ethereal, surreal thing. But I just think it's really important, and I think it's a thing that a lot of people miss out on when we're playing music. When I used to lecture at BIM, I used to tell a few stories about stuff like this, as part of a lesson, and because as you said, you share those things. I think it's really important. Communication, that word, it's important musically. It's important, for the characters and the personalities in the band, and we're human beings, and what we're doing is playing an instrument together. And in a way, that's weird. Like, why would human beings do that? It's like when we go up in an airplane. In a way, we shouldn't be up there, but we do it because we can, and it's all good. So we make it work, So on a stage, it's like, and in a touring bubble, or just a pub gig, we don't know, because I still do pub gigs. We all do. I mean, we don't have to do the highfalutin thing. Just making sure that everyone is on the same playing field. It's the same, you could liken it to, Charlie Jones has been a great mentor for me, bass player with Robert Plant originally, but he's out with the Cult at the moment. He's doing Goldfrapp. He's done his own solo records, which are really experimental. He's when I said earlier, I've been learning and watching. He's one of the people that I watched, and I've learned so much from just different situations, like being in the studio and maybe recording without a click, and there's a tempo issue, and you know what it's like after about half an hour of not getting the right one. People get a little bit edgy. Some of those personalities who might be struggling pick on someone else first. Ralph Salmons told me a great story about that once, which I won't go through now, but it's true. The one who shouts loudest is sometimes the one who's got the problem, is trying to shield it from themselves. And I just saw how he dealt with the situation, maybe going outside, getting some fresh air, or talking about how we're feeling it, and with the grid of time, because sometimes people could be swinging it rather than playing it straight. And if no one's had that conversation, no take is going to work if you're not all on the same page. So I find that kind of same sort of ethic of talking about things works obviously in a musical point as well. And I've gone, well, I've been swinging my ba-booms on the bass drum. I thought we were going ba-boom rather than ba-boom. Oh, right, now it'll sit. And then, oh my goodness. So very early on, if I'm producing stuff, because I've started producing some stuff lately as well, I will quickly use all that information and gather people up so no one starts going, it's you, oh, you. Kill all that straight away, nip it in the bud, and say, right, guys, how are we feeling it? I'm feeling it slightly straight. Are you guys feeling it? No, okay, interesting. Let's try it your way, but let's go, knowing that we'll probably go back the other way. But it's just, again, communication, dealing with people, man. The stories I've heard about some famous musicians, from some of the engineers and producers I've worked with, again, I won't share them because they're obviously private. But man, some of the issues out there, and I'm just so glad I know how to steer my way out of some of these situations. And some of these are big name people that you think, really? They're like that? Wow. It's all a learning curve. But yeah, that's kind of my thing anyway. And the main thing is it works for me and the people I work with, and they like having me back. Which, like you said earlier, if you can make these relationships, you can make them last, you're doing something right. And it's not just you drumming, it's you. It's people like you on the tour bus. They like you at the pub gig. They like you, on the car journey, as because you play well, but they also like being around you. That's really important.
Yeah, and that kind of almost brings it full circle as to what we were talking about as from the fear factor thing, or the concerns or anything like that, is like you say, whether you're playing a pub gig with some other musicians or you're playing with the biggest artists on the planet, we are all human beings, and everybody has their insecurities, everybody has their good days, their bad days, and everything else. So as long as you just do you, and you are calm and confident and happy with everyone else around you, then it just makes for an easier gig.
It does. And if there's an issue, like you said earlier, talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to go away. And every gig, it'll be like, you played that too slow, you started that too fast. And that'll just keep going. And then you'll get paranoid, then you get angry.
Yeah.
And you're lying in your bunk, or you're on the bus, or you're coming home at night in the car, go, oh, I should have mentioned it. And all of this is so negative, and we've all done it. I know I have, I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
You eventually think, one day I'm going to ask the question. Then you feel like this weight has been lifted. And it's never going to be like you think it's going to be like, you're going to have this argument that could be nasty. It doesn't usually go the way you think it'll go. The other person might just go, oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. And you go, oh, sorry. No, don't be sorry. Oh my God. Oh, right. Okay. Well, if I can help, sometimes it won't, but most of the time, 90%, it's like that. The other person was not aware that was an issue and how much it was upsetting you. So again, communication, just talking about it. And honestly, what it's like, you go home that night and you're like, I feel brilliant. I want to dance in the daisies. It's brilliant. My life is okay again. I'm looking forward to that gig. I'm not looking at my diary going, oh, I'm not looking forward to that. All that's gone. And then you can play better, and you do play better because you haven't got this heavy weight hanging over you all the time, which is for someone isn't good.
No, exactly. Well, I think we've put the world to rights pretty well so far. So maybe we should get to a couple of the members' questions.
Better had, yeah.
Yeah. Let's kick off with. I say kick off. How long have we just been gabbing for?
Get two drummers together, it's going to happen. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're in for the long haul, and quite frankly, they've probably got quite a few nice little gems out of that if they haven't already experienced it themselves so far. Anyway, so
right, cool. Yeah, hope so. Yeah.
Let's kick off with a question then. So, This first one is from Jeffrey Gordon Beckstead from Ottawa.
Okay.
And he has asked, any recommendations for finger wrist control learning? And he says, so fast double strokes are an ongoing challenge for him.
Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff I'm going to come out with, will be in books and stuff you've shared with them probably.
Yeah.
But my take on that, and I was just teaching someone on Sunday talking about this. It's important, I think, because obviously I'm not with that gentleman, but meaning face to face now. But what I found was that a lot of my students and a lot of drummers tend to, you can sort of see that from here, don't keep the fulcrum there all of the time. They do what I call opening the gate, and I think Joe Morello called it opening the gate, where you just let this finger come off the stick a little bit and the fulcrum's sort of back there. And that's okay, because we get a bigger throw, and if I bring that finger down and then open it up again, it's got a bigger throw. But the thing is, this control here is it's like writing with a pen. When you want to get those doubles happening and they get faster, that's where the control needs to be, not further back. So he may need to look at that, see where his fulcrum is with the doubles. But I would say look at that first on both hands. Obviously, I'm doing it on my right because I play traditional in my left. But then, double stroke playing without accents, nice and slow, getting them really even, and then like a kind of runner, taking them a bit faster without getting sloppy or louder, and then just bringing it back. And then you can also look at accents in the first note, accents in the second note, but very, very slowly. People do this really fast. They come back to, oh, I've done it like this, or send me a video clip. I'm like, no, lovely, but can you go back and do it slow? This is a slow process to get the speed that you are looking for. And then eventually when you've got the accent on the front and on the second one, the first and the second, then you can start putting those techniques together. But it's also understanding the mechanics of how your fingers work for each sort of little increment of time, and you're getting faster and faster. So I would say be patient, whoever I guess you're teaching them. So, listen to what you're saying to him. And, some of those points I just mentioned, work on those. They're pretty much basic ones that Thomas Lang, I know, talks about and other teachers talk about, but they work. I'm not borrowing it. I know it works because it worked for me, but it was a slow process. And when people come to me and say, here's my doubles, and their arms go up and they go, and they're fast, but they're very stiff, like me winding up one of those robots behind me. It's like, whoa, you've got some, but there's no flow. And the first one's accented. You're accenting every first one. So it doesn't sound like a nice Rolls Royce engine. It sounds like an old Ford Cortina, turning over, or a Flymo. We don't really want that. We want something smoother. So it's a painful process. We've all been through it. But, I think those tips, if you haven't done it already, will really, really help you.
Yeah.
And hurry,
Yeah, and to highlight on them, like you were saying about the stick position and stuff, it's like, I've always saying to people to, whatever stick you use, you try and find your balance point, and then work with the motor functions, your big power sounds up in your shoulder and getting down into your smaller muscles for faster, more dexterity, and have it like you say, you're a traditional grip player, so I dabble with a bit. Funny enough, I play a lot of my jazzy funk traditional.
Cool.
So the Jamiroquai tribute I do, Space Cowboy, I play the majority of that as a traditional grip.
Nice.
And then some of the heavier stuff you go into deeper underground, say, then I'll chop and change over. So really try to just explore all the avenues and try that little the transition between French and German grip. I've always said is a good one, especially for light, fast singles and doubles. But I think that's some solid advice. And then, like you say, at the end of the day, we're all learning from other people and then honing those skills. So it's sometimes when we talk about this stuff, it's almost like we're teaching people to suck eggs.
But it does feel like that.
But I think what people need to appreciate at the end of the day, and like I always try to say that I always bang on about the fundamentals. whether no matter what it is, the fundamentals, and it's your foundations, your fundamental skill set to be able to do something, isn't it? You know, so yeah,
it really is. And I'm a big bastion for slow practice. I mean, some of the pad things that I do on my YouTube thing, a lot of it isn't always fast. It's slow. You're done with the click, and I'm just finding melodies within the rudiments. Maybe we could talk about that later, but you know, I find that a really good way of playing, because then, like you say, you're using all the motor skills. You're looking at what all the limbs are doing. You're looking at, you start naturally doing some sort of molar stuff, even if you haven't learned it. You're naturally doing it because of, you know, a quieter stroke needs to be lower, and an accented note needs to come higher. You know, it's not rocket science in a way. You know, and then letting the stick do make the moves for you, and preempting it, so you know you're not going to accent twice. I get a sympathy accent every time you hit a right, the left isn't going to follow, or vice versa. You know, you can control those, and slow, steady practice on all the rudiments, and just finding little accented melodies. You can do so much with that, because you find little themes. And then you think, right, those accents I could put on the tom-toms, blooming hell. Now I'm on the cymbals with a bass drum under it. Oh, my goodness, I've come up with all this stuff. And it was just you sat down, I don't know, watching Coronation Street, tapping out some pad exercise. Not that I don't watch Coronation Street. I don't actually watch telly. That usually, the TV here, I just show like Netflix and DVDs. You know, I don't watch any TV. But, you know, I get lost in a movie sometimes, and I'll sit there practicing, and I'll suddenly forget what I'm watching. I think, right, I really like that. I'm going to record that. That's a little thing. And it's just brilliant. You keep inventing all the time stuff that you think, what can you do with a paradiddle? New, you know, loads. If you really work at it, you know, that could feed onto something else. And like writing songs, I find when I'm working with rudiments, I'm writing songs. I'm finding little melodies within it that I can take away and use in different styles of music, or in a solo, or wherever I want them. It's really refreshing, and it saves me always going into YouTube. Though I've got a massive list of stuff I watch. Don't get me wrong, you know. But I like to think I'm coming up with stuff myself by just stepping away from it occasionally, being inspired by Mark Giuliano or somebody, but taking an idea and then running with a concept and then putting it back into me. And I think we said this earlier, then it comes out sounding like you, even though it's something you've borrowed, because, you know, a load of stuff out there has been played before. But then you might play something after it that no one else has played, those sort of things. And steady work with rudiments and accents, it's a good way to start, really is.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, I find also getting a focus in on, you know, understanding the difference between, you know, playing solid doubles and singles, but once you get to that certain speed, to appreciate that, you know, some of it might work better as a buzz roll, you know, or depending on what you're playing, but understand what you're doing along the way, to basically give you the keys to unlock those doors.
Absolutely.
And relax. You know, you're not going to be able to play fast if you locked all your tension in your shoulders, are you? You know,
that's completely right.
But yeah, I think we've nailed that question for him quite well.
Fundamentals, that's a good word. That's what it's about. Always, you're dead right. Always,
definitely right. Okay, so we've got another question here, and it's from Joe Jr. and he's in Nigeria.
Okay.
So what's he say? He says, How do I learn and master new fills? So this could be quite a big one.
That's quite a big one. Do you know what in a way what I just said a minute ago by sitting down, you know, one way would be to sit down with a pad or the drum kit and just play and record yourself and just jam and come up with ideas, you know. If you need to play along to a track to begin with, and it stops and you keep going, you know, just to get you started. But once I find once the machine has been fed my brain an idea, once it's been fed an idea, like a 6-stroke roll, what am I going to do with a 6-stroke roll? Right, right, what could I do next? That's how I start inventing. So, like I say, I've kind of covered that a minute ago, but that's how I start to think of new ideas. Could be something I've seen on YouTube. Again, I just said that a minute ago. I might find something that inspires me. I might rip it off completely to the best of my ability. Then I think, well, what if I put my right hand there? Or if I put those doubles on my bass drum? And I start to find I reinvent. And a fill that I play with my hands, I'll turn the right hand into my right foot. And he could, if he's left-handed, he could do it the other way around, you know. And then all of a sudden you start thinking, okay, so that fill that does that now sounds completely different because I've got the rights on my bass drum. Or I could put some of the left-hand strokes on a closed hi-hat. You know, they call it gospel these days, chops, don't they? But I could try that. And you just start reinventing, and you need to be confident that no one's going to come into the practice room and go, what are you doing? because, you know, if somebody hadn't gone from we would never have straight contemporary music. Someone had to do it at some point. I bet someone said, "Fool, you should be doing that. It's ding, 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 ding." It's like, no, it's not. Ding, 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 ding. Like those Little Richard records, you know, and Chuck Berry, where the rhythm is straight and the drummer's still playing semi-swung. And some of the early Beatle records do that as well. It creates a tension, but someone had to straighten out that quaver. So just be confident in those kind of ideas. Don't be afraid to watch YouTube, rip people off, make a little playlist of all these great drum solos and things that you like, you know, and whatever you're into. But then also spend some time just on your own with the pad and the drum kit, just trying to be inspired by those ideas and come up with something a little different. It's like I was just saying about the double stroke roll, and it's what nobody wants to hear, but it's about time. You need to make time for yourself to do it. It doesn't happen overnight. And if you do learn, you know, the chop of the moment, then that's great. But then the next guy who's going to come up is going to play the same lick, and they go around like the triplet thing back in the day, the John Bonham thing. You know, everyone says John Bonham, but Max Roach did it 15 years earlier, which is where he got it from. It was only critics that called it, rock critics, that thought it was a Bonham thing. But where does that go? That's since moved on, you know, over the last 50 years. That's become something else with double pedals and doing doubles where the singles used to be for the triplet. And then two on the feet becomes something different again. You know, it's just constantly inventing. And the thing is, you've got enough knowledge already. You just need to experiment and place it around your limbs in different ways. And you're really, because, you know, with my students, I say, you know, all right, I'm going to show you this lick I do, but, you know, that one we learned last week, or that rudiment and what we did with it, I'm going to ask you to take that away and come back next week or 2 weeks time or whatever and reinvent that, or put it in as a passing phrase to something else. I want to see you do something with that before we try and get the next one, the next one, the next one. Milk what you've got, you know, milk every last drop, you know, you can, from every rudiment and every phrase, because there's more you can do with it.
Yeah, totally. And touching back on his question, for if he's got it in his mind of a mindset of he's looking at someone and he's referring to, you know, mastering it like them, then you know, my advice to that would be to not take the influence from them. You know, go, oh, that sounds great. I'd love to be able to do that. Study it, slow it down, but then don't kick yourself if you don't do it the same as that person.
Yeah,
own it and embellish it and you know, start adding it into other bits and pieces that you do and make it your own. You know, it's like,
I completely agree with that. I mean, there are people that just want to, you know, regurgitate stuff. You know, there's loads of people on, again, I won't say any names, but on YouTube, and, you know, playing Buddy Rich solos almost as close as Buddy. And I love that. And I think it's great. But every time I get sent one by a student, you know, I try not to seem cynical, but it's like, well, that is amazing. And it's superhuman. But whoever that person was, it's kind of, I don't want to say wasted time is the wrong term, but it's like the time they spent learning that, they could have spent time using those ideas and turned it into something else. Or maybe they will, who knows? But I'm just not a massive fan of that kind of playing along with a clip and stuff. I mean, it is amazing, don't get me wrong, but it's almost like I sit there going, why? You're a brilliant player. You don't need to do that. You know, that's Buddy's done that, or whoever you're mimicking. That's been done, you know, and you've got that speed. Wow, what are you going to do with it? It's like when I watch classical musicians. I mean, I love classical music, don't get me wrong, but, you know, they play these massive piano concertos and they're beautiful. And when I talk to classical people, I always say, do they ever improvise? And I go, no. They'll spend all their life just learning that piece, you know. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing, and that's dedication, and amazing that you can remember it, that, all the music. But then my other brain kicks in, my improvising sort of jazz brain, and goes, what a shame. Like that run, for instance, you could freeze a bit and say the speed of that run of what they're doing. What if you did it like, you know, do you see what I mean? It's like, and they go, no, well, I wouldn't dare do that because you only do this in Beethoven's whatever. And to me, that's why I could never fully ever delve into that world, because that isn't me. I couldn't do that. And it's the same for me when I see these drummers. So I find it really weird. So you're dead right. I think you should, you know, if you want to learn it like that, play it, but then think, actually, why am I bothering to? It's kind of been done. How can I take it into my playing, and, like you say, own it, turn it into something different? So if someone say, oh, is that a bit like so and so? because I did it at a Dennis Chambers one back in the 90s that was, and I said, well, it is a rip, but eventually, and it was with a crossover as well, but I managed to sort it out where it became mine in the end, you know, and it was like inspiration to Dennis, thank you, not as fast obviously, but the idea, but then I turned it into a Robism instead, and then I could teach people and say it was mine, you know, and I say, if you really want to know, the influence came from there, but this is where I took it. It's like, oh, okay. And that was the start of me realizing that if you're just going to mimic everybody all the time and just regurgitate it without owning it and moving it on, then, you know, you're going to be like, you're just going to start to sound like a lot of other drummers in your local area doing the same thing. And that can be a bit dangerous, you know.
Yeah.
It's very limiting. It's limiting.
And the whole premise of, you know, him saying, and to master a fill, you know, to me, mastering something means that you can do it easily.
Yes.
You know, it's not that you're outdoing someone else, or it might be a show off piece because everybody likes to show off now and then, but the point being is that it just feels easy for you. And then you get people going, oh, when you do that thing, it looks so easy, but I can't do it. So, well, you can. You learn. The best one I have with students about saying you can do stuff, or early people that inquire about drums. So like, oh, I could never play the drums. So I'm like, it doesn't apply to everyone, but I go, okay, you got a driving license? Yeah. So you drive a manual car? Yeah. Well, essentially, you could play a drum kit then, because you know you got the independence there for steering and the gears and the clutch and all of that. You know. You can do it and just work up from the ground up. You know, I've always used that with people. Say, oh, no, I've got no rhythm, I can't do this. And so, well, you can control a car with some nicely, then you can essentially get the motor mechanics of playing the drums. And then, going back to that, mastering something is just when it's easy. And a lot of people don't ever really master a standard groove properly because they're so focused on getting, you know, what I kind of almost class as bedroom musician chops.
Yeah, totally.
You know, focused, fixed. I must do that. You know? I think hopefully that gives Joe a bit of food for thought on that one. Yeah, and good luck with it. You know, good luck. If I don't say at the end of all these questions, good luck to everybody doing this stuff. You know, and we can, like you say, we can all do it. It's just bit of time, dedication, and some imagination, I think, as well. Yeah, exactly. All right, cracking on to another one then. So we've got Jeff Klein from Oakland, California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a bit of Oakland strokes there. So what he says, right, here we go. I get tense when I'm faced with a hard or technical drum part sometimes. But I also know what it feels like to transcend that. Excuse me.
Yes.
And it's surreal. So his question is, how can I rely on myself to relax and just play instead of stiffening up?
Right. Well, actually, in our when we were waxing lyrical earlier, I kind of mentioned some of those. Now I know meditation make people go, oh, Maharishi Yogi and all that business. But, you know, focusing and spending time on the part. I mean, make sure you can play it. Obviously, you can. But, you know, when you see it coming up on the set list, you start to panic. This was happening to me just a little while ago, so I feel I'm pretty up on this at the moment. I'd get to Happy House and I'd be looking at my hands going, I don't know what they're doing anymore. And for some reason, it wigged me out. So I would say, make sure you know what it looks like if it's a written part. You know, if you've got audio of it, play it round and round in the car. You know, when you're doing stuff at home, be around it, sing it. Make sure you can sing it and play it without the music being on, so you own it without actually anything happening. Make sure you can play it with your fingers. Make sure you can think it through, and then start to see yourself playing it. And I found if I find parts tricky, I'll slow them down in my head, play them really slowly, and think of all the micro movements of what I'm doing, and then take it back up again. And sometimes I'll even do silly little raps over it. So I'm trying to put myself off, you know, and try and be able to sail through it so you're watertight. And I find that really helps. If I'm doing some sort of like a jazz fusion session or something that's not just singer-songwriter, and I find that I'm really not up on my game because I'm spending a lot of time doing stuff like Siouxsie and stuff like that. Then I'll want the music beforehand plus the MP3, and just sit and go over bits that I don't feel comfortable with over and over and over again, almost to the point like Steely Dan that I'm bored with it, and then I record it. It's that sort of thing, and just worrying about it won't help. You just have to go in there and play it round and around, then get on the kit and start playing it with the music. Also sing it through on the kit, maybe with just a click, and you're playing the parts and you're hitting those stabs or whatever. Record yourself, make sure you're listening and watch it. I did do it. And then slowly but surely you gain that confidence, and you start to again own that song or that part, or that section of the song. You just completely rinse it. But you can't do it just by sort of sitting down and being aware that you're worried about it. Again, I feel like I can say that because I had that issue. I had to spend hours and hours putting it right, and it worked for me, and I'm goddamn sure it worked for you as well. It doesn't go away. You still, a little bit of you still kind of a little bit worried about it, but as I say, the rest of you, the confident part of you, the drummer in you says, I've got this. Thanks, my nervous system, for being there, but you're not needed at the moment because I've got this totally covered, because I know it inside out. I can play it blindfolded.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I had a situation recently where, it's a show that I've done so many times, and obviously then we kicked into lockdown and whatnot and didn't do it for several years. And coming back to it, I sat and probably rehearsed more on it than I ever did back in the day, because I was overconfident and cocky about it at the time. And getting back into the seat, and stuff that's easy is all of a sudden like I'm cramping and uncomfortable, and and I get on that gig, and got through the gig and got to the end of the gig, and I'm like, I'm exhausted, absolutely exhausted. Felt like a terrible gig, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, hang on, this, you've done enough rehearsal on this, practice on this. Just it's difficult to tell people to just relax.
It is,
but
I appreciate that.
If you can take those two words and put them into a mantra that works for you, and you can, I do the whole breathe in, breathe out, drop, and I tell myself, just relax, and that can really make a difference. And for some people that psychologically feel like they're locked in and they can't actually do, these certain kind of like fills or techniques and bits and pieces that feel hard, sometimes you're your own brick wall.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time you are your own brick wall. It's like also on the learning process of it, isn't it? It's like at the end of the day, quite a lot of it, you do have to build up those hours, because you're putting that motion memory in place.
Yeah.
And you're locking in all those bits and pieces. So all of a sudden, I've said to students in the past, I said, right, this groove that we're learning, I want you to get to a point where you can sit there and we can have a conversation, or you can write a shopping list, or you can think about what you're doing later, because you've got that. And it goes back to kind of Joe's question as well, doesn't it? You've mastered it.
Absolutely.
And because you're relaxed, you're confident, it's in there. Just get out your own way sometimes, really, isn't it?
Yeah, the brain's a funny thing. It sometimes backfires on us, and puts this, as we say, this fear factor comes up rather than I've got this. Get out of balance, and you need it like that, where your confidence and your drumming brain's in control, and your nervous system's still there doing its thing, but this is where you're at, and I think that only comes with thorough knowledge. I mean, I know so many people who blag, and I've been a blagger at times, not on big gigs or sessions, but, and you get through, but you don't feel very good at the end of it. I always feel like a fraud at the end of it. And that doesn't help the imposter syndrome, which again goes back to what we were saying earlier. So complete knowledge, of knowing the chart. I can close my eyes on a difficult chart, and I could see it with my eyes shut. I know where the problems are going to be on those pages. It's that sort of ingrained in my head, but they're not problems now because I can play through it. But, it's that, I think this will be all right. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, here we go. That feeling, I mean, I'm so past that being a thing, as I'm sure you are, that when you're young and cocky, like you say, it's fine. But when you get older, it does more to your insides and your brain than you want it to, And that's, like you say, the hours of getting it right slowly and surely and reading it, playing it, regurgitation, that's when you master something. You don't master anything if you kind of keep edging away from it. And pick yourself playing it, just he needs to really picture himself playing those pieces of music and those sections. Really imagine that, and if he imagines a mistake, brilliant, let that happen in your mind rather than when you're playing it. And I found that Land's End was my track over this last couple of months. That was, when I was playing it, I'd be like, my arms, what am I doing? It's right, but because again, I'd spent time, but something in my brain was saying it wasn't right. And once I got over that, I was playing it just the other day. I could play it anyway. It's just like,
yeah,
it gets there, doesn't it? And you're like, yeah, brilliant, I've got this. Or waiting in the queue at the bar or something, and you're humming it through and seeing your arms playing and your bass drum where it goes. Brilliant.
You end up with that eureka moment. It's quite satisfying.
It's lovely, and then it'll never go wrong. And as I say, when I played at Pasadena, every song I was just like, yes, I'm loving this. My limbs are there, everything's doing what it should be doing. I've mastered this. It's control, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've
exactly.
been in control of what's going on.
Yeah, cool. Right. Okay, so let's move on to Sally Ann Holmes from the UK. And I suppose it's a bit of a loaded question, really. I think we've probably covered it, but see if we can get any further insight. It basically says, on average, how long does it take to be an okayish drummer?
Wow. Good question. Well, what does okayish mean? That's a very loaded question, isn't it? And what is an okay drummer? Is an okay drummer just someone who can keep a beat, or is an okay drummer if you can handle a reading gig? Where I guess it all comes down to what you want. I've had questions like this before from people, and I always say to them, it's what you want to be. And I'll go through a few drummers. For instance, I'll say Ringo, they go, oh, not very good. And I go, okay. Vinnie Collie, oh, amazing. Oh, okay, cool. Now, and we said this earlier, sometimes Vinnie is an amazing drummer, but sometimes they might want old Ringo because he's got a certain thing, and he might be an okay drummer, but he's got the thing that actually is better suited than Vinnie for this project. So that's why he gets the gig. So does that still make him okay, or do you think he's all right now because he's got the gig? Like, if you like to Oasis and he was playing with them, would you suddenly think he was all right and okay? It's like, yeah, probably. It's everyone's perception of what that is different. I mean, if Sally's looking at herself saying, when am I going to get this eureka moment of feeling like I'm not an imposter? To be honest, you never get there, as you know, Lars. You're always improving. You're always getting better and pushing yourself and moving forward and pushing the boundaries further away from, which is great the more you learn. But I think if you're an okay drummer, to me, if someone come in and played me a groove in solid time with a few fills and I asked them to do a few things and they could do it, you could say that's an okay drummer. They'd be like, okay, but you play very nicely. But it's like, it's hard to explain what you mean by the okay. If she was here, she might say, well, if I play a paradiddle at 120 BPM, does that make me okay? There's so many different ways you can cut that. What do you think? I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it?
It really is difficult, and that's why I kind of see it as a bit of a loaded question, because if you took one groove and got 50 drummers to play it, and then you took a panel of people, some are going to be okay and others are going to be amazing in the eyes of the audience and
the individuals.
Like, maybe if I steered her question possibly from a learning point of view, and she's talking about, I don't know, maybe a beginner, say, and they're coming in and they're going, right, okay, brass tacks, how long until I'm okay at playing? Well, surely the simple answer is well, how much time can you put into this? And how much focus and energy and enthusiasm do you have to master the bits and pieces that you're learning? Because that's the difference between if you're an okay... Well, actually, no, it's not the difference between whether you're an okay drummer or not, I don't think, because that's still personal to you. If you've got the imposter syndrome, the amount of times I've come off a gig and people have gone, that's great. And in my head, I'm just an okay drummer that night, or I was god awful, but as far as everyone else was concerned, the gig went great, and Yeah, it really is a loaded question, but it's, I think from the learning point of view, it is down to absorbing the knowledge and the perseverance and how much you can focus on it as to how quickly you get to what you perceive as being an okay drummer.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It really is a difficult one. I don't think anyone could ever answer that question.
I don't think, I mean, and from a playing point of view, the minute someone gives you a gig, you're an okay drummer because somebody wants to work with you, so would that be but then of course you play in that band and then you see another band that you want to join and you want to get into that band and then it's then are you still an okay drummer when you get into the slightly better band? I'm okay. Yeah, I'm still okay. It's kind of, it's an interesting question.
I think the day someone can answer that question properly, the world might implode.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I can see what she means though. Yeah. But I mean, with all these questions, and again, we kind of touched on it, but it's how you feel doing it yourself. How you feel when you play drums, how it makes you feel, how much you want to learn. It's all down to the individual, and there's no, I tell all my students, there's no race. Don't get involved in the speed race and all that business. Don't get involved in that because there's no rush. You do it in your own time. Whatever you think is okay is up to you. That's fine. Just enjoy the musical the process of playing music and learning, and playing with other people, even if it's just a very basic group. Just enjoy what that feels like, and then that'll make you want to do more and make you want to improve. Just don't get stuck in, Jim over there plays faster than me. That's no good. I've got to get as fast as Jim. I've had a few students like that, and I have to go, whoa, hang on a minute. We're not runners, are we? We're not, athletes. We're musicians here. This is a different kind of mindset we need to get into. You're not trying to beat anybody. We're just trying to progress and get better ourselves. We're not trying to outdo anyone. That's a whole. So I try and get. I mean, yes, we've got egos, but at the same time, you've got to rein it in. That's what I do anyway. I find it very difficult to teach people that just, can I go faster? It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah. You haven't even put the basics down yet. So
yeah,
you can unfeel.
And don't if I like a personal anecdote of my own is don't take try and find the constructive criticism out of what people say, but properly understand when it is just someone's personal opinion.
Yeah.
And the anecdote in question is from me is in my early 20s, I got on a gig and played a couple of songs with the Steve Gibbons band from Birmingham that my dad was the main drummer for. He did the Saints and Sinners album and all sorts. But so I got up and guested, and I did 2 or 3 numbers, and came off, and I felt like an okay drummer. And I won't name any names, but a chap that had followed Steve Gibbons for years and is a good fan of my dad. He came up and he said, "You're an okay drummer, but you'll never in your entire life be a patch on your dad." And it hit me like a freight train at the time, and I was like, oh, well, I failed then, haven't I? And now looking back on it in hindsight, it was actually like, well. And funny enough, people the dad thing as well, the family musician thing. One of the first questions everyone seems to ask is, "Oh, okay, a chip off the old block then. You play like your dad." And my response is always, "Well, no, we're 2 totally different drummers."
Yeah.
Because we're 2 totally different human beings. We may come from the same lineage, but to just understand that those types of questions and those kind of things that are put towards you are someone's personal opinion, and if you can find the context within it that can benefit you to progress with stuff, then I think that's the most important lesson learned, rather than feeling horrified that someone, because at the end of the day, not just in drumming, in life, someone's not going to like you.
Yeah, not everyone's going to love you,
Exactly,
and I try not to look at the YouTube comments on anything, but when I did some Simple Minds sessions and some of the songs come out on an EP and a 12-inch. You know, I tried not to look. This was a number of years ago, but I couldn't resist. I was going down. People saying, I really like it. It's like their early 80s sound again, and it sounds like a Lynn drum. And that was cool because it wasn't. It was me. And I was thinking, that's great. That's my tuning and everything, brilliant. And then, you know, it was like, does anyone know who's playing drums on this? Doesn't sound like Mel Gaynor. And I thought, well, dare I go any further into this? The abyss. And then it was like someone had said who knew I did the session and sort of said, yeah, that's Rob Bryan. He's done this, that, and that. And they were like, well, he's no Mel Gaynor. And I stopped reading it. I thought, no, actually, and of course, now with Sue, with Budgie, you know, there's some comments like, these guys aren't no Banshees. And, you know, who does that guy think he is, you know? And it's just kind of, as I say, a few things get sent to me, but I ignore it, you know, and think, well, okay, you know, but that's just one person's opinion on something. And then I go further down again, what a lovely band, you know, recreating this great music. We'll never have the Banshees. We can't go back in time. Thank goodness she's out there still doing it with these guys. And when people come up and ask me stuff, that's what I say to them. I say, we're just recreating the magic for you guys. You know, we can't replace, you know, Severin on bass, and I can't be Budgie, you know, but we're doing our darndest so you guys can have a good time with your favorite pop star. You know, this is what it's all about. You know, it's music. It's not war. It's not something that we should be divided about. Yeah, sorry, I'm not Budgie, but that's never going to happen. You know, they're never going to get back together for various reasons. So enjoy the music and let all that go and remember the memories. You know, don't get lost in that. But it is hard when people sort of critique and sometimes bitch a little bit about stuff. You know, you can't help but let it go in, and that must have devastated you. I mean, that's a hell of a thing. I had to say, people saying, oh man, your dad played brilliant brushes. So whenever I played brushes, I was like, oh no, everyone's looking at me thinking Dad is better than you. And it took a while to find my own, probably for you, to find your own voice when you've got a father who's, you know, well known, and it's like, oh man, like, you're Ray Bryan's son. I'd be like, yeah. And the minute someone said that, half of it was like, hey, recognition. The other half was like, oh, I know what that means. They're going to be looking saying, well, he's not as good as his dad, or whatever. You know, it's like so stressful. There must be other people in our positions. Imagine Paul McCartney's son, people like that, or, you know, famous people. What do you do when you're under your dad's shadow? Or mum's shadow. It's so hard.
Yeah, it's a strange one in that as well. So, funny enough, you mentioned about Siouxsie, and then, you know, Siouxsie and the Banshees kind of like, well, you're not so and so, you're not this and that. I've had a similar one with that as well when I did a stint with Uli John Roth, who was originally with the Scorpions. And of course we play a lot of his sky guitar stuff and Sales of Sharon, which is a great piece to play. I just wish I got to do the orchestra shows with him, but that would have been amazing. But, you know, we obviously play a lot of Scorpions in the set and all sorts, and it's a good gig actually because he puts a lot of Hendrix in because he's a massive Hendrix fan. So
nice.
Mitch Mitchell is one of my he is one of my influences. Mitch Mitchell, Ian Pace and Billy Cobham are my three big hitters, really.
I forgot to mention Ian Pace. He's my favourite from that era.
Those three for me are just absolutely just dying out on them, really. But when we played a couple of shows, and I remember someone coming up to me, because of course Scorpions are still going as well. So there's that kind of juxtaposition, and the guy's like, "Oh, wow, yeah, gig's good, but you know, never be as good as you know, the current lineup with the Scorpions, this, that, and the other." And I just kind of, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So, but you bought a ticket and you come to the show, so must be doing something right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no.
And the fact that they're commenting as well, you know, there's some reaction in you that we're stirring up, which is a good thing. We're making you think about it. Even if it's something you don't like, we've helped in that process.
Yeah.
You're still here, and you've still bought the record, or you've still sat on the seat. You know, it's strange. Some people, you make these comments as well, don't even come to our shows. You know, we do. You see it, and you're like, you probably weren't even here. You're just at home, like nagging and moaning about stuff that you can't change because you're that personality. You know, because some people just enjoy doing that too.
Yeah, professional trolling, really, isn't it?
Oh,
you know, at that point,
awful.
Yeah. Well, before we we won't go down that road though. We'll leave there be. Peace and love to them. You know,
yeah, exactly. Peace and love.
Good. Cracking. Well, so we got one more question.
Oh, okay.
And it's from Noel Snow, and he's from Calgary, Alberta.
Wow, they're very far apart, these places.
Yeah. It's global community, which is good.
Global community, man. I dig it.
So his question is, what is the exercise that best opens your ability to ghost notes and the execution of different styles? Okay, that's interesting.
Double, yeah. Question. Well, I find, like I said earlier, when I'm playing on the practice pad with my accents, so working through all the rudiments with the accents, on the first or the second, if it's the paradiddle, or the third or the fourth beat, moving those accents around really helps me when I get to the drum kit to play grooves. I already know my stick height on the snare drum. I know what's going to work. So I would say do your rudiments on the pad and stickings on the pad with plenty of accents, nice and slow. Think about that, the muscle memory and how it works and the motions. And then when you get to the drum kit, that naturally comes out onto the set. I mean, obviously with the snare, it comes back a bit quicker than a pad sometimes, but depending on what pad you've got. But the minute you can do it on the pad, you can take it to the snare drum, the cymbals, the hi-hat, anywhere on the drum set, it will start to work. And if you're looking at sort of grooves, like the sort of Clyde Stubblefield kind of funk grooves, again, if you think of where those accents are on a paradiddle on the doubles and where your accent was on a paradiddle, you've basically got it. But you're playing just obviously quavers with the right hand, so da da da. So when you're playing paradiddle da 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 with either hand, when you'll get into that part of the rudiment, because you've got the accent, you've got your backbeat, and then you've got the other two strokes to follow. So actually, when you think of that, and then you sort of think of bum da 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 ga, you've already got that from a paradiddle. It's all there already. You just need to play it over the top with the syncopation with the right hand or left hand, which way around you play. And it's all kind of already there. And just think of the height of the drum, think of the accent coming down and the grace notes being closer, and don't tense up. Because, and again, you won't tense up because you've practiced them on the pad. So you know exactly what they are. I'm trying to make it sound simple, and it probably doesn't seem simple, but actually it really is that simple, Yeah. And if I was on a drum kit, I could demonstrate that, just see how those rules apply. And then getting them up to speed is just practice. So when you look at boom, all those kind of drum and bassy kind of things at speed, again, they're all being played very, very slowly. The increments that are needed for the hands and the fingers to work and the response of the drum. And then the rest of it is just getting it faster. Doesn't take very long at all to get that. But again, it's slow, steady practice and understanding what you're trying to do and not getting frustrated and moving on to something else, It's all practical stuff. Again, fundamental stuff. You can do it on a pad. You can do it. You can do it anywhere.
And that's it. And kind of going into bringing it into the execution of different styles. It really is like if you've got that core foundation, providing you then have a fundamental understanding of that style, you can then understand how to approach those ghost notes within that style. Because some of them might not have ghost notes,
Exactly.
You might be doing some 80s rock thing where they're like, no, get rid of all just hit it. That's all we want.
Going to gate the snare drum. It's going to sound great.
Yeah, that's it.
Because if you could do those doubles, in boom, gap, if you got those, when you get to swing, and you put them into the triplet, it's the same world. And if you're playing a samba thing, or like a calypso, boom, songo type thing, those accents, it's going to be the same kind of placement. So some of them are very, very similar, funk, Latin and jazz, jazz is swung, obviously, some of it, not all of it. But those same rules will apply. And again, if I had a drum kit, I could show you, because I do it with my students, where those doubles will swap over into different feels once you understand how to do them. Again, making it sound simple, but it actually is. A lot of things lead on to other styles and other things. It's just, like you said, where you play them. And sometimes you don't need any. Sometimes I'll be on a session, I'll say, can you mind? They'll slow with the snare and say, yeah, don't worry with the grace notes. Let's just have that backbeat. We don't need it. You think, okay. And sometimes it's the automatic pilot that we do them, isn't it? We can't help it because they're sort of there. But once you're told, it's like, okay, wipe the slate clean, like an Etch-a-Sketch, and you just have the backbeat. Yeah, lovely. And you think, oh yeah, the next time you hear the track, you think, yeah, I don't need that. Or whatever. It doesn't need that. What was I thinking that? Oh, cool.
Yeah, because that's artistically what they wanted for the track.
And then the role reversal of that is someone says, oh, those little quiet beats people do between your accents, could you do those? And if you haven't mastered it, it's like, no. Yeah. So of course we master them and we get as many as we want in that space. And then again, once we've mastered it, those fundamentals, we can use them or not use them to the project and the song, because the song is king at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
As drummers, we have to be sort of battle ready with all these things as much as we can. Like all these questions I've asked today, they're all getting ready for that. And
yeah, totally. I think one thing I'd add for that, when for practicing accents and ghost notes, starting off in the pad work, is that I make a suggestion as well as to swapping out your sticks for brushes.
Nice.
To then, because of course you don't have that solid wood, and you can't rely so much on just lightening up slightly and doing those ghost notes. So being able to then see how you control the whip of the brushes, and the subtle dexterity. I find that's quite a good one to do. And I'd never really done that. I'm not a massive brushes player, but I do do a lot of work on a George Michael tribute called Fast Love. And one of the songs, I always forget the song name, terrible song names, but that is all brushes, that song. Right. And it finally got me to kind of focus in on the nice brushes work, because you transfer in your from the hats, and it's all just done on the snare drum with a nice wash from your left hand or your right hand, whether you're left-handed or right-handed. And that got me thinking, and all of a sudden I was like, okay. And I was looking at the Jojo Mayer's DVD about building up your general speed and things like that, and he says like playing on pillows.
Yes.
And he actually says, I don't myself fundamentally play on pillows. He said, but I will stack towels so that it gets softer and softer to the point where you can play on anything the same. You've got the dexterity on a wide open loose floor tom versus really hard piece of metal.
Absolutely.
And it's just an experiment as well, and being able to play a wide variety of focused bits and pieces in your practice, really, I think is
definitely
it's quite important, really.
Yeah, pillows is a good one. I'd forgotten that one. That's a good one. I remember my dad told me that. I was like, some pillows. I was like, right, okay, cool. And he said he even took the spring off the bass drum pedal. I was like, what? Apparently there's this story, and I think Shelly Mann was at the side of the stage, and was it Dennis Chet? Anyway, there was a more sort of modern player. Well, I heard this story in the 90s, and apparently Buddy's spring broke on his pedal, and they were like, oh, what are we going to do? And apparently he just leant down, and it was towards the end of his set. It must be West Side Story or something. And he pulled the beater back, and he played heel up at times. He started playing heel up and just caught the rebound and just kept it moving. And they were all going, whoa. It's like, I can't remember where I read it or heard it. I think Shelly Mann or somebody like that spoke about it. And maybe Dennis Chambers mentioned it in a video or clinic. And he said, I think if Dennis Chambers mentioned it, he said, because I used to practice. He said, obviously you can't do beats because it just stops against the head, or it falls back against your leg. But to get it moving without the spring, get your foot doing the thing. And I was like, wow, that's amazing to sort of play the stroke and then capture it and then keep it going. It's just like amazing, kind of old folklore Buddy stories. But I can imagine he could do something like that. But I'm not recommending you try it, because you couldn't do much after it because it just stopped. But anyway, interesting, man.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The way we get around these bits and pieces, isn't it? I remember having a bass drum pedal break on a gig, and all of a sudden figured out how you could do a nice groove just using my left hand to play the snare and the hi-hat, and then right hand just playing on the bass drum. Managed to get through the last 3 songs, and no one really noticed the fact that there wasn't any ride there or the odd kind of bit. But it's and do you know what, I think even those types of things, like in a rehearsal room space, just sometimes sit there and go, right, what bits of this kit shall I remove today, and just get a groove?
Absolutely.
Just get a groove with your snare drum and hi-hats. Don't have anything else,
I love that.
Or just put a snare drum there and get the ride going and go, oh, right, okay, well, how can I get some interesting sounds out of it, Play the hardware. It's there. It's
exactly.
there.
Experiment. I love students to do that. I ask them, I said, please just be inventive, take things away, move them around the other way, do things that are just, because when I was working with Colin Moulding from XTC, he said that Andy used to set Terry Chambers set his kit up in awkward places and move it all around a bit, and he'd moan about it, but it'd make him play differently. He said, well, Terry, we want this to sound different, so we're going to put your floor tom where your toms were next to the bass drum, and then we're going to put a tom there, and maybe your hi-hat over to the right, and just because we wanted to play just kind of weird, and it really worked, and it come up with some really inventive drum parts. I think making plans for Nigel's a kind of a weird drum part, and sometimes when I'm working with engineers and musicians that know me really well and producers, they'll say, do you mind playing match grip, Rob, for this? Because we won't get Rob, we'll get a different Rob. So I'll say, okay, I'll angle the snare up, move it from where it's away from me normally, traditional, angle it up, and I'll play match grip. And that means that I haven't got the dexterity on my grace notes or buzzes or anything with my left. So I'm not thinking I'm going to do anything flash with my left apart from play what's needed. And, they always say to me, we get more of a garage band sounding Rob, like you're an 18-year-old, like, can you play a bit more like that? So all of a sudden this other Rob happens. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I did a session a little while ago where I did something like that. I took the front off the bass drum head, I put two 18-inch crashes as hi-hats, and I tuned the snare down so it was sounding pretty gross with some moon gel, sort of Lindrum-ish. And then I started to play this, and it was for like a singer-songwriter, but he said, could you play sort of Steve Jordan-ish? I was like, well, if only, but yeah, I got the idea. And he said, can you also give it that sort of a Dilla beat thing? And I was like, man, the rest of the songs were nothing like this. He said, I know it sounds mad, but just try it over the top of this more kind of Americana thing we're doing. And you know what? It sounded really cool. So I was like doing these right-hand things occasionally on the hat, but I was playing totally differently than I would have done if I was traditional grip in this position. Do you know what I mean? It was very, very inspiring. So like you say, changing things round and stuff, because some of it may actually end up on a record. And it's like, yeah, really proud of that. More so than some of the other stuff, which is more kind of robbed, a Robinson, those things.
I've enjoyed it in the past. You go into a studio session and all of a sudden you're like, there's nothing more fun than just almost throwing the kit away and re-bringing in bits, to create those sounds for those, for the end result, We may be kit players, especially myself. I don't really do any percussion and bits and pieces, but I do love it when I get into the studio and they go, right, okay, well, so we want this clunky sound, so let's grab a trash can lid and see what we can do for that type of sound, or like, all right, let's get a cowbell, but we want you to to just have a bit of a play with muting it at times and getting some different sounds and bits and pieces, and experimenting with things and drawing yourself out of the box of just sitting there and playing what you're used to, because you can almost teach yourself a thing or two along the way as well,
Yeah, so you find out a lot about yourself as well. You suddenly think, I would never have thought of doing that. And and when, like you say, when you're on a roll, pardon the pun again, but when you're on a roll on a session like that, and they said, okay, well, what else should we try? We could put some reverb on it, and then let's try that. Let's take your head off the snare drum, just hit the metal shell. What's that going to sound like? Well, probably a bit clanky, but okay. And and you sort of do that and record it and mess with it, and they said, we're going to put this on it. Hang on, get all these little things, software up. What could we put on this? How many hertz is that? Blah, blah, and there's like science, and I'm like, oh, what does it sound like? And they play, it's like, my God, that's an amazing sound. Nobody would have thought we would have took off the snare drum head and just hit the shell on the side and put the mic inside it on the side, and it's brilliant. It's like that whole inventive thing of 67, just trying things out, whether it be Pet Sounds or Sgt. Pepper, going back to very basic albums I know of rock and roll, but when people like that experimented, the world started to change a little bit, and look what happened after that. It's amazing. If no one had ever thought of doing it, then we'd still be playing rock and roll, I guess. It should have been cool, but we had to move forward at some point.
Yeah, yeah, and I do like to think, it's very easy as we get older to get into the cynicism of going, oh well, music today isn't what it used to be, and I can fall into that trap at times, but I always
Me
like
too.
to try to optimistically think that, okay, well, to us, what's going on right now with certain things may sound very generic, but actually, you get under the hood of that.
Yeah,
You might actually be quite surprised as to how some of it's done, and yes, the popular market is always going to be filled with a certain thing because it's copy and paste to people that love it through and through, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
no,
you've always got room for all those other layers below that, where people can experiment and come out with some cracking stuff.
And it is out there. Someone was saying that the other day. You just got to find it, and it's easier to find now because the internet. You can find it a lot easier than you could back in the day. And there's a lot of good stuff out, a lot of good musicians, a lot of good styles going on, lots of good fusion of stuff going on. It's all happening. You just got to kind of look for it, not in the mainframe a little bit, and of course create it yourself.
Yeah, totally. That's it. And having the just go for it, and like you say, you with your own practice. Don't let anything hold you back. Just, play through it, learn from the wisdom of others, absorb the criticism and make it positive from what you put out from that, and just be very mature in the way that you listen to yourself and listen to others. Just master your drumming ability the way that you want for your life and your playing, and
Exactly.
And then you will find the roles and the jobs, or if you're just if you've already got your dream job, but your passion is playing the drums, then great, go down the rabbit hole even more so with that, because you've got no ties to worry about. You don't have to, fit in the time for learning all those songs for that bread and butter gig or this and that and the other. You can enjoy it even more so,
That's true.
But yeah, I think we've put the world to rights on that, and given everybody some fantastic tidbits of information to go away with, or we've just come across as two blokes rambling. But
bit of both.
Bit of both. I'd like to think there's some sense in there somewhere.
Oh, I'd like to think so.
But yeah, Rob, thank you very much for doing this. It's been absolutely brilliant, and I hope everybody that's watched this has got something out of it, and we shall see you on the next Guest Mentors installment.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Lars. It's been really enjoyable.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rob. Take care.
Cheers.